acknowledge and accept yourself. Okay, so now we're getting to the heart of the matter, that place where you take action to get things started, that time and place where you turn the corner and begin your journey to go from ordinary to extraordinary. The start of something like this is exciting for me because it signifies a brand new start to something so profound that it'll stay with you for the rest of your life. The first thing I'd like you to do is to set aside all biases and preconceived notions about what you think you know. Then, open the You Are the Answer workbook to page 5. You'll know you're on the right page because there's a picture of a big green light with a caption underneath that says, "Start your journey here." Actively follow along as we go over some of the fundamentals together. So let's talk about where to start. The best place to start is the beginning. Write that down in your workbook. So many people want to start something in the middle. The middle is a place where we desire to be like everyone else who we think is succeeding. Starting today, I want you to promise yourselves that you'll start at the beginning in every endeavor you make, every project, and every process you begin. Think about it. We don't start school in the 7th grade. We start in the 1st grade. Even in corporate and government settings, I so often hear about how we just need to get back to the basics or the fundamentals. Why is that? Because the fundamentals are the foundation upon which everything else is built. The beginning is also a place we go to get to know ourselves, our strengths, our weaknesses, our abilities, physical, psychological, and emotional, our limitations, physical, psychological, financial, time, and emotional, our desires, the things we want, our motivation, why we want them. These elements form the basis of who we are. And these elements will help us to get to know ourselves even better than we believe we already do. So, let me ask you, how do you perceive yourself? Now, I realize this can be a thought-provoking question, especially if it's the first time you've ever contemplated it. You owe yourself an honest answer. And by the way, only you will know whether or not it's accurate. How? Your conscience, or your innermost self, your soul, will reveal it to you through resonant assurance, an internal clear knowing of the truth. So take the time to think about your answer. Pause the video if you must. But before you do, consider some of the following insightful questions to help you through this initial self-discovery phase. What is your true nature? Are you easygoing or meticulous? Are you pessimistic or optimistic? Do you like what you see? Once you have what you determine to be an honest answer to this fundamental question, restart the video. Okay, so hopefully you have some insight on how you perceive yourself at this point. This is your starting point, the point at which to launch the discovery process and everything that awaits in your journey through these lessons and the lessons of life itself. Let's take a moment to go through an exercise together. This exercise is one that's designed to help you gain better perspective of who you are. Think of it as an introduction to your self-awareness. To begin, we'll take a critical look at ourselves using 4 key elements, the first of which is strengths. So right now, I want you to pause for a moment to reflect on what you believe your greatest strengths are, and then write them down in your workbook. Write the first things that come to mind, and keep writing until you cannot think of anything else. Then, pick your 3 greatest strengths and highlight those. At any point, I want you to feel free to pause the video while you take the time to write out your answers. It's very important that you take your time as you allow what's inside of you to emerge so you can capture it and then examine it. Keep in mind that your strengths are attributes that you will lean on as your awareness increases and your clarity begins to emerge. Next, pause once again to think about your weaknesses. Acknowledge your weaknesses by writing them down. This is not a time to be self-deprecating or overly critical of yourself. Instead, be openly honest with yourself to give yourself the best insight to own your personal awareness. This is, after all, one of the most important journeys you'll ever take. Don't think of your weaknesses as necessarily negative aspects. Most times, weaknesses can be overcome once they're identified. Some of the questions to contemplate can be, am I cynical or critical? Am I physically weak? Do I lack certain skill sets which I desire to overcome? Next, pick 3 of your weaknesses and write them down in your workbook. Once again, feel free at any time to pause the video while you contemplate and write out your answers to each one of these elements. Next, I want you to think about your abilities. What are you particularly good at? Are you musically inclined? Are you athletic? Are you skilled in math, language arts, science, or art? Are you organized? Are you good with people? What are you able to do as well or better than most other people you know? Then pause for a moment to reflect on what you believe your greatest abilities are and write them down in your workbook. Then narrow your responses down to 3 you most connect to and highlight those. Finally, repeat the process to identify and highlight your limitations. To help you along, I want you to think of your limitations differently than you do your weaknesses. Your weaknesses come more from an internal restriction mechanism that you must work on to overcome, whereas your limitations are typically an externally driven resource restriction. A limitation example may be money, time, or environment. With this in mind, write your limitations down in your workbook. Then narrow your responses down to 3 and highlight those. We'll talk about how each one of these elements leads to desire and motivation in Lesson 2. But before we do, I want to take some time to carefully examine the answers you provide to each one of these elements. Strengths, weaknesses, abilities, limitations. Allow your answers to resonate on a deeply personal level. This may be the first time you've seen these elements outside of yourself. Think about how profound the information is now that it's right in front of you. The ability to see your thoughts is a powerful force multiplier in bringing about your awareness as you get to know yourself on a more intimate level. The knowing is an essential aspect in helping you to arrive at an honest acknowledgement of who you are. Your acknowledgement of each of these elements leads to self-awareness, which leads to self-mastery, all of which are critical aspects in the process of discovering the best direction to take in life, not to mention the sustaining effects it'll have in your quest for achievement in virtually any area of your life. So, before we move on to the next lesson, go back over this part of the exercise once more. See who you truly are. Acknowledge who you truly are. Accept who you truly are. It's important to note that you don't have to like what you now see. You simply have to acknowledge it and accept it, even as a starting point. You cannot change what you cannot see, but once you see, you can change the very course of your life.